Guess we'll get going. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This is, I believe, the third winter education seminar that we have going this winter. I want to first thank Golf Body facility here in New York City. It's a magnificent place. If you didn't get a chance beforehand, if you want to take a look around, we've got, good morning, Daryl. But if you notice here, they've got some incredible bays here. They have a fitness center that's outrageous, and there's also a club fitting facility upstairs at the putting green. So please check that out afterwards. This is a member facility. They cater to a really, really good client base here, and we're really happy to be here. So what we're going to go over today are guys that have been starting to help me out with my fitness and nutrition, because I need to commit to that. It's really difficult as a golf professional to stay in shape. And so we're really just trying to do our best so we can maintain our bodies and be healthy during the year. So I want to introduce two professionals here, Kirk and Jason Jenkins. They're going to be going over things from how to stay fit to nutrition to what you can do off the golf course. So the presentation, winning off the course. So I'd like to first introduce Kirk Adams.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. On behalf of myself, our owner Tom, Danielle, want to welcome everybody here to Golf Body NYC. How many of you, is this your first time here? Almost everybody. That's awesome. So like Kirk said, please take some time today to take a chance to go and look around, check out the facility. I'll talk a little bit more about what we are here in a minute, and then just based on when I was putting this together today, I obviously want to direct it to you guys. So my assumption is that pretty much everybody here is a golf professional, teaching professional. They deal with instruction. Does anybody kind of fall outside of that? Okay, perfect. So, what I want to try to do today is enlighten, hopefully, you guys a little bit on what we do here for fitness, and then give you some things that you can take away to help not only yourself, but the people that you're working with and the people that you're giving lessons to. So, my goals today are to operate this clicker effectively. That's my number one goal. Hopefully, stay on time. And if I do those two things, I think we'll be successful. So, like Kirk said, I'm going to focus a little more on the fitness part of this. We're going to take a little bit of a break, maybe like a 5-minute break, just to change over presentations, give anybody a chance to go to the bathroom, grab another cup of coffee. Then Jason's going to come up. He's going to tackle more of the nutrition and the recovery side of things. And then hopefully between those two pieces, we'll cover most of those bases. We'll leave maybe 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A. And then hopefully you guys will leave with all your questions answered, and hopefully some stuff that you can take home to help yourself and the people you're working with, okay? So I wanted just to start by tell you a little bit about myself and where I came from and where my perspective is. I've been in the fitness industry about 20 years. I started as a strength and conditioning coach at Penn State University. That's where I went to school. I got my undergrad and my master's degree in kinesiology there. I worked with a number of teams on campus there while I was there, including men's and women's golf. So I had a great opportunity to work with two pretty good collegiate teams there. Some athletes who went on to play, the mini tours, PGA tours, so some really good players there. And then I've been here at Golf Body for about 4.5 years, and that's been a kind of a change of pace. Living here in the city, different clientele, but it's given me a perspective of working with some different people and taking some of the things that we did at Penn State and bringing it here. So Golf Body, if you guys, again, first time here, if you're not super familiar with the club, we're set up like any outdoor golf country club would be here in the Met section. Our members pay an initiation fee, they pay yearly dues, and then what we try to do is offer all the services here or have the resources to offer services, anything that we think would help our members reach their goals and play better golf. Okay, so that obviously includes instruction, and Ron and Joe, they take care of most of the instruction here for us. We've got personal training. We've got a full-time PT chiropractor here who deals with our wellness services. Those things include, massage, acupuncture. We just started offering Pilates and yoga classes, nutrition counseling. So what we try to do is, just figure out all those tools that, a member may need, whatever goals they tell us they have. We want to have all those tools available for them to reach those goals and get to play to whatever level they're looking to play. So why fitness? Okay, why are we interested in this? What is important about it? How is it going to help us play better golf? Okay, so I look at it this way. Certainly not, fitness is certainly not the be-all, end-all. Instruction, talent is absolutely going to generally win out at the end of the day. But I look at it from an idea of kind of filling buckets. So if you take an athlete, you take a player, someone you're working with yourself, there's a lot of different things that are going to help them play better golf. Obviously, talent, instruction, equipment, there's course management, there's the mental side of the game, but there's a physical component to that as well, okay? And I think, if we're trying to help people play better golf, the more we can fill all of those buckets to whatever degree they can be filled, the better chance that person or yourself is going to have at playing a little bit better. So we need to figure out, are our physical buckets full enough to play as well as we'd like to play? So for some people, they may be, and this may not greatly affect the way they're playing or your ability to help them as a professional. Others, they may have a very empty fitness bucket or physical bucket, and we can really help them. When we look at our members here, we typically see one of two types of members. Either they've had a lot of instruction, equipment is on point, they've kind of dialed in that side of things, but maybe they haven't spent a lot of time in the gym. And then we have some that are on the other side of things. Maybe they've grown up in sports and they're pretty fit and they understand the weight room concept, but maybe they haven't had a lot of lessons. Their equipment isn't as dialed in as it could be. So again, we try to illuminate that for them, show them where their areas of need are, and then they can try to fill those buckets that are going to help them the most. I think what it helps us do is it hopefully helps us stay healthy. Okay, golf, one of the great things about golf is obviously it's a game that we can play for a lifetime. So the longer we can stay healthy, the longer we can play, the more we can play each year, the more rounds we can play in the summer, the more rounds we can play in a weekend without being sore and tired and having our backs bother us and things like that. So, typically I think a lot of people, as they get older, tend to play less because they get a little bit tired, things start to hurt, and they start to enjoy the game less, and they take less lessons. So if we can help them feel a little bit better, stay a little bit stronger, especially as they get older, they can stay healthy and they'll continue to play longer and hopefully take more lessons from you guys. And then obviously we're trying to save shots, okay? I mean, that's what we're all trying to do here is score better, lower handicaps, have more efficient swings, all those kind of things. So again, if those fitness buckets are a little bit empty, if our mobility or our strength or we can't hit it far enough, those all things can help us save shots, can bring handicaps down, can hopefully make your lessons more effective and make you guys look better as teachers. So what I'm going to go through today is kind of some of the big areas that I think are important to touch on. We're going to go through kind of areas of mobility, strength, power, endurance, warm-up, and try to explain those in a little more detail, why I think those are important, what you guys can hopefully look for on your end, and try to decide if someone is in need of a little bit of attention in those areas, and then hopefully give you a strategy on what to do. My goal today is not to make you guys great fitness professionals. My goal is to just have you help identify, if you see something in a lesson or if someone is struggling with something in their game, maybe it's tied to something that they're missing on the fitness end, help you identify that, and then help them find where to go to get help to make that less of an issue for them. Okay. So what is golf fitness? Okay. I think it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Sport-specific training, golf fitness. Everybody has a different idea of what that is. There's a couple things for me that golf fitness is not. Okay. It's not just stretching and core. Okay. I know, especially when I was working at Penn State, and it's becoming less frequent. But when I would tell people I work with the golf team, they would immediately say, "Oh, so you guys do a lot of stretching and core work?" And I would say, yeah, that's a part of what we do, but that's certainly not the only thing that encompasses training for golf. It's also not just balance exercises, not just standing on one foot. It's not just standing on a Bosu ball and doing exercises along those lines. Sometimes those things are appropriate. Obviously, having good balance is important in golf, and obviously training that for someone, again, who is struggling in balance is important, but that's not the only component of fitness that I sometimes see. Everything that we do doesn't have, every exercise that we do doesn't have to look exactly like a golf swing. Many of our members, we look at it from a standpoint of, there's some baseline movement patterns and abilities that everyone should have, and we'll get into those a little more in detail. Again, sometimes trying to replicate the golf swing is not what that person needs. If they already are well instructed, they have an idea of how to get the club face on the ball. Maybe that's not their issue, but maybe there's some other underlying fitness things that we need to focus on a little bit better. So, when you're looking for a golf professional to maybe refer your clients to, not everything they need to be doing needs to look like a golf swing, okay? And then I think it's important to understand that, golf fitness is not necessarily, bodybuilding, weightlifting, powerlifting, or CrossFit. Those are all great methods of training, and those are all different sports, like golf is a sport, okay? And bodybuilding will get you big and strong. Weightlifting, there's a technique involved there. So, those are good methods of training, but I don't know if they're the best method of training necessarily for every golfer, okay? So be aware of where you and the folks that you're working with are going to get their fitness, the type of things that they're doing, and make sure that their program is not maybe based solely on what those sports are designed to do, okay? What I think golf fitness mostly is, okay? And again, a lot of golf fitness could be very applicable to a lot of sports and a lot of just general health and fitness, but I think there needs to be an element of lateral and rotational exercises, or exercises that are going to challenge our ability to control movement and forces laterally and in rotation, okay? A lot of traditional fitness is very much, we look at, the body can basically move in one of three ways, okay? So it can move kind of forwards and backwards, up and down, side to side, and it can move in rotation. And a lot of traditional fitness, a lot of very good fitness is very much forwards and backwards. If we think of running and squats and pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and those kind of exercises, great exercises, you can get in great shape doing them, but the transfer maybe not be there relative to golf, based on the fact that in golf we have to control a lot of the ability to move side to side, and obviously we're trying to create a lot of rotational elements there as well. So making sure that there's some exercises in your program, or the program that your clients are going to, that kind of challenge them in those ways. Golf is obviously very asymmetrical, meaning we're generally always moving in the same direction in the golf swing, and that presents some challenges to the body. One of the biggest causes of injury, one of the biggest causes of pain in the body is asymmetrical development. And if yourself or your clients are only kind of moving in one direction, they're going to probably develop some asymmetries that we probably want to balance out a little bit with some training, so that we don't end up with some injuries or we don't end up with some pain. Now there are some adaptations and asymmetries that are beneficial relative to golf that for maybe your better players we don't want to overcorrect, but for most people that you're probably dealing with and we deal with, the health and wellness side of it is probably going to trump any asymmetries that may be necessary for higher level performance that we don't want to mess with. Okay, so we have to be aware of the fact that golf as a sport is very asymmetrical, very unidirectional there. There's certainly some mobility aspects, and we'll talk about this more, that are specific to golf, and again, a great fitness program may not address that, and the things that we need to be mobile in specific to the game of golf. There's obviously a power component. We need to be able to, or it's gonna help us perform if we can hit the ball a little bit farther. And again, a general fitness program may not include something for power, so we need to make sure we're training those elements. And we need to make sure we're including the ability to have some endurance, okay? Golf can be a long game. It can be 4, 5, 6 hours. It can be up and down hills, out in the hot weather, multiple rounds in a day, multiple rounds on a weekend. We need to have the endurance to sustain that ability. So, it's great to have, strength and power on the first tee. We want to have that on the 18th tee or the 36th tee of that day. Okay, so there's an endurance component there. So let's talk a little bit about mobility. We'll get into some specific areas now here that I think we want to look at. Okay, and mobility is one of them. So, what I think mobility does for us is it's going to remove roadblocks in our swing, and it's going to give you guys options as teachers when you're working with a particular client. Okay, so you guys all know, I'm sure, the people you're working with, they're going to, for the most part, they're going to get the club face on the ball. Okay, but there are a lot of the things that you're seeing, a lot of the challenges that they may be having, are because they're swinging around mobility limitations that they have in their body, and the things you may be trying to do, they may simply not be able to do based on how their body is moving. Okay, so if we can improve some of those ranges of motion, it may allow them to have a more efficient, more repeatable swing, and give you guys more success in what you're trying to do in your lessons. I'm going to kind of skip over flexibility versus mobility. Joint by joint, I think, is important. So when we look at the body, and this is, I think, important relative to why some things hurt in the golf, or potentially can be injured or hurt in the golf swing. Our body is basically made up of a series of joints that should be primarily mobile and primarily stable. Okay, I'm going to use the low back as an example in this case. The low back, okay, is basically designed to be a relatively stable area of the body. Okay, the area right above it and right below it, okay, what we call our thoracic spine. So we sort of have our cervical spine, we have our thoracic spine, we have our lumbar spine. Okay, the lumbar spine or lower back is supposed to be primarily a stable area. The thoracic spine, or what we'll call our mid back, that's where we're supposed to get our movement and our rotation from. We're also supposed to get a lot of movement in our swing from our hips. Okay, what we typically see, and what I'm guessing you guys might see, is with a lot of the clients you're dealing with, you're not seeing as much shoulder turn, as much upper back rotation as you'd like. You may not see as much hip rotation as you'd like. So when those mobile areas are not as mobile as we'd like them to be, the stable area that sits in the middle tends to suffer, tends to start moving more than the body wants it to. That's why the low back tends to create so much pain. So if you have a client who's having some low back pain, it may make sense to refer them out, get them to check on is their upper back moving well, are their hips moving well, and that may be the cause of their low back pain. And then we see that throughout the body. We see the same thing in the knees, in the cervical spine, those kind of things. But I think that's an important concept to understand, especially relative to golf and the low back and some of those things. Mobility is important for power. Obviously, generally, the bigger range of motion we can move through, if we can create a bigger shoulder turn, if we can have better hip rotation, we're probably going to be able to generate a little more club head speed, a little more power. Again, that's going to help us in the long run with what we're trying to do. You know, two things that I think most people don't take enough advantage of, most golfers don't take enough advantage of, especially, you know, middle-aged guys, which is a majority of our membership and potentially a majority of what you guys are seeing. Foam rolling on a daily basis, okay, and massage. Those are two tools relative to mobility, relative to how your body is feeling, which I think are not taken advantage of enough. So, you know, I suggest, you know, to all of our members here and to anybody I'm working with, you know, try to, you know, get a foam roller, try to learn some basic things to do on a regular basis, make that part of your daily routine. In general, I find you're going to just generally feel and move better if you're doing that consistently. I know I do, and that's something as again, a general suggestion. If you've got people that are stiff, they're tight, they can't move real well, ask them if they have a foam roller. If they don't, suggest they get one, refer them to somebody that can teach them how to use it a little bit, and suggest some regular massage. Again, I think that would be a great tool outside, again, of your lessons that are going to help them move a little bit better. And then breathing. This thing is a little beyond the scope of our talk today, but just understand that how your members or your clients are breathing can affect how they're moving and any pain they may be having. So again, if you have somebody that you're working with that's having a hard time moving, again, maybe refer them to somebody that can work on their breathing technique a little bit. I know it sounds a little bit strange if you've never heard of this or dealt with it, but breathing is a skill just like a lot of other things, and if it gets thrown off a little bit, it can affect how we move and how we feel. So what should you look for, okay, for the people that are, you know, the people that, for yourself and the people that are in front of you in your lessons? So I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the Titleist Performance Institute, TPI, okay? As golf professionals, as anybody working with golfers, I always recommend that they go through at least a level 1 course on TPI. Most of the level 1 course talks about their screening process and how these physical mobility challenges, stability challenges, and what how they're going to interplay with the things you may be seeing in your lessons. So if you want to dive into that, I think that's great. I think that would be a big tool to help you, again, work with people, figure out what could be holding them back, and then finding someone qualified to kind of help them from there. Another screening tool that we use here is the functional movement screen. Less specific to golf, more specific to movement in general. But again, I think it would give you some great ideas of areas that people are struggling in and how they move, and might kind of make some sense based on, you know, I'm seeing this in a lesson. It makes sense based on what I'm seeing here in this assessment, and again, give you a common language that you could go to a fitness person and say, you know, they're struggling in this assessment. Can you help them? I'm seeing this in my lesson. What can we do to kind of work on that for this person? Beyond that, I want to kind of work through 4 quick screens that you could probably do where you're at in a lesson. I'm going to ask Jason to come up here for a second and just talk a little bit about what you want to look for and kind of how that may affect again, what you're seeing in a lesson and how you can help somebody. So we're going to start with shoulder external rotation. So basically I'm going to have Jason face me. I'm going to ask him to bring his right arm out here to about 90 degrees and then rotate his hand back towards me as far as he can just by moving the shoulder joint, okay? And what I'm basically looking for here is if I draw a straight line here, I want to just take notice, is his arm on this side of the line? Is it equal to the line or on that side of the line, okay? Good, relax for a second. So ideally, I want to see his arm on this side of the line, okay? Equal would be okay. If he's on that side of the line, okay, I know he's definitely got some limitations in his ability to externally rotate that shoulder, okay? And I would check both sides, okay? That is going to affect his ability if he's a right-handed player. Right shoulder external rotation is going to affect where he can put the club in the backswing, okay? And when I check his left arm, it's going to affect where he can put the club on his follow-through, on his downswing, okay? So again, if I find that that's limited, he may have less options of where he wants to put the club in his swing. I may not be able to get him to do certain things in his swing based on what he's able to do. So if you're seeing people that are having a hard time getting the club where you'd like them to get it on the backswing, maybe you're seeing strange things in the follow-through, checking that external rotation thing might kind of clue you in. Is there a physical challenge here, or is it something they just don't understand? And if it is, again, trying to find someone that could help you make some changes in that ability. Trunk rotation. So, basically what I would call shoulder turn for the people we're working with. I'm going to ask Jason to sit. We'll have him sit on a diagonal that way. So this works well on just kind of a box or a chair. And I'm going to ask him to keep his knees together. This is a little lower than I would normally have him do. I'm going to ask him to kind of hold this across his chest like this, okay? And so what we're looking for is I'm going to set him up on this diagonal this way so that when he turns towards me, okay, just turning his upper body, I want to make sure that his knees stay here. And I want to see him turn his upper body. What I'm doing is I'm comparing where this alignment rod is, sorry about that, where this alignment rod is in relation to the side of this box, okay? And again, I'm trying to notice, is it on this side of the box? Is it equal to the box? Or is it on this side of the box? Let's turn the other way as well. Okay? So for Jason, we're basically looking at 45 degrees of rotation here. And again, this is going to tell me to relax. What kind of options does he have? So again, if I'm not seeing the amount of shoulder turn that I want in my swing, I might take a look at this and say, okay, he simply doesn't have that ability to do that. Okay? And this would tell me, so again, I want to make sure that hopefully that alignment rod is a little past 45 degrees. It's a real simple visual thing to see, and I can say, okay, this is a physical challenge he is or is not having. I may need to get some fitness help to improve that a little bit. Okay, go ahead and stand up for me. The next one is going to look at the hips. So if you're seeing, potentially some challenges relative to the hips, maybe some more lateral. Let's go this way. Maybe some more lateral movement in the swing. Let's have you kind of stand right there. Maybe some more lateral movement in the swing than you'd like to see, okay? If the hips can't rotate the way we would like to, okay, what we find is a lot of times people will substitute lateral motion in that swing, okay? And that may be something you're trying to get out of their swing, but they may not be physically able to do it because their hips simply won't rotate the way they need to. So what I'm going to have Jason do is stand on his right foot, okay, with the alignment rod kind of, so put your weight on your right foot, kind of kickstand with your left foot, like that, okay? And then what I'm going to have him do is rotate towards me, okay? And I have a 6-iron on the ground here, okay? And a 6-iron just happens to kind of correlate with about 60 degrees of rotation, okay? So again, I'm looking at this alignment rod relative to that 6-iron on the ground. Is it on this side? Is it equal to, or is it short of that? Okay, again, ideally, fortunately for Jason, you can relax. He's on the good side of 60 degrees of rotation. So for him, maybe that's not a physical limitation. Maybe it's just something they're not understanding in their swing, but there's nothing physically that's kind of roadblocking their ability to maybe do the things with their hips that you'd like them to do. Again, if we're on this side, if we're on the bad side of it, that may be causing some of the things you're seeing, and you may want to try to find someone that can help that individual improve that rotation a little bit. And then the last one we're going to do, upper and lower body separation. So there are times, obviously in the swing, when we want the upper body moving and not the lower body, and vice versa, and sequencing and all those kind of things. But again, sometimes people just, they simply can't they can't move one thing and stabilize the other and vice versa, okay? So what I'm gonna ask Jason to do is just stand in a golf posture, okay? What I would tell someone is set up as if you're gonna hit a 5-iron right against the wall right there, okay? And then cross my arms, okay? And then what I'm gonna ask him to do is, I want you to turn your upper body like you're in a swing without moving his lower body, okay? And I'm just looking, you know, can he independently move the upper body versus the lower body, okay? Unfortunately, Jason's doing a pretty nice job here. Again, I'm looking for about 45 degrees of rotation in each direction. Kind of show a bad one if you can. It's going to be hard for him to show a bad one, but if you notice now, you know, as he turns to me, the hips are not being stable, the shoulders are turning with it, okay? And now show me lower body separation, okay? So we want to be able to do that, okay? And then we also want to be able to do the opposite. We want to be able to rotate the hips sometimes without rotating the upper body, okay? So again, if you're seeing some sequencing issues or a lack of power, some different things like that. Again, quick test so you can see is this person able to do this, and then again if they're not, maybe either try to find someone that can help them out a little bit with those. Cool, good, okay, thank you. All right, let's see. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about strength. So well, we'll get to questions at the end. Strength, okay, so another big component of fitness I think is important relative to golf. I think, again, strength is a bucket, okay? Strength is a bucket for everybody. Some people's strength bucket is plenty full, and getting stronger is not going to have a big impact on their game. Other people, maybe that strength bucket is a little empty, and then doing some time in the gym, working in the gym is going to help them a little bit improve in their game. What I think strength does for everybody, relative to going back to staying healthy, is it helps us withstand forces and be resilient. Okay, so again, swinging 100 miles an hour or more, especially with our juniors, strength is going to give our body the ability to withstand those forces. Okay, do them repeatedly within a day, over multiple days, and hopefully not develop any injuries or asymmetries or things like that that are going to prevent us from being able to play. So I think strength gives us an ability of a quality of resiliency that will just let us play more and with less pain. Okay, so even if someone is strong enough to play performance-wise well, continuing to train, continue having some level of strength is going to help them withstand the forces of the game. Strength is going to be the base of our power pyramid. Okay, so power is basically strength at a higher speed. Okay, but if that base of strength is small, okay, the likelihood that you're going to help somebody or have somebody swing faster, hit the ball farther is going to be reduced. So if we can build a bigger base of our power pyramid, we're going to have ultimately a greater ability to swing faster and hit the ball a little bit farther. I think there's a lot of questions in the golf community sometimes about, is strength training safe for golfers? Okay, I would say that for the most part, for most individuals, it's absolutely safe. That doesn't mean it's always safe. There are, I see a lot of things in the gym, I see a lot of things on the internet that I would not consider safe. So I think there's some things you have to be aware of, and just like anything, it's the application of it that is important, not just strength in general. So we'll talk a little bit about assessment, but we did a little bit of a mobility assessment there. Those things are also talking to me as a trainer in what would make good exercises for Jason in the gym. Okay, Jason moves very well. Okay, so I have a much bigger menu of things that would be able to program for him than if he were to struggle with all those things. Okay, so I think it's important to have an assessment done, make sure the people that you're working with have had a movement assessment done, like a TPI screen or FMS screen, so that when someone gives them exercise, it makes sense for them. Okay, the same exercises that are good for Jason, who moves really well, may be really bad for somebody you're working with that doesn't move very well. Okay, so there's a difference there. Same exercise, good for someone, not as good for somebody else. That's where exercise selection comes in. Okay, we talk about some of these exercises that tour guys are doing. Is it good for them? Is it bad for them? We don't know unless we assess them. And again, it may be fine for them. It may not be fine for the people you're working with, or vice versa. Okay. Technique is also important. So a good exercise done poorly is no longer a good exercise. So making sure that the folks that are helping the people you're working with or helping you are obviously emphasizing and teaching good technique, and making sure that that is generally prioritized over more weight versus less technique. Okay, so again, a good exercise can quickly become a dangerous or bad exercise if technique is sacrificed. And then programming is important too, okay? And that just comes down to how many days a week are we doing it, how intensely are we doing it, how close to rounds are we doing it. For your general population, I don't think this is quite as big, but if you're working with higher level players, you know, obviously if they have a stretch of, you know, several days in a row that they're playing, that may not be, again, the best time to be programming your most intense workouts, okay? So again, good intentions applied in the wrong sense can now be troublesome for an individual. And I think there's an element too of, you know, for golf, how strong is strong enough? Okay, again, we talked about strength as a bucket. We want to fill it, but we don't need to overflow it and have it pouring out on the rest of the floor. Okay, you know, there is an element of strength that is important to golf, and strength can help you play, it can help you be resilient, but it's not football, it's not hockey, it's not powerlifting. You don't need elite world-class levels of strength to be a good golfer. So once you've sort of filled that bucket, you want to maintain that bucket being full, but we don't need to overdo it. And sometimes I think that's where people get in trouble too with it being safe, is they've sort of filled that bucket and now they're just pouring more and more on top of it, and we overdo it a little bit. Okay. So there is a point where there's a little bit of diminishing returns there as well. We talked about assessment. It's important, I think, to understand, you know, training age and dealing with better players. Okay. Good players are not necessarily good at fitness. Okay. I work with a guy right now online. He's, you know, has played on the PGA Tour, continues to play mini tour events. Great golfer. He's a beginner in the weight room. Okay, and I need to make sure that I understand that, you know, just because he's really good at golfing, I can't, you know, again, can't give him the same exercises I might give Jason, or can't even give him the same exercises of a not as good golfer who has been training consistently, been training for years, and understands the gym. So I think there's an element of, you know, being better at golf does not mean you need to be doing more complex things. It doesn't mean you need to be doing higher level things. It may, but it also may not. So I think understanding that is important, maybe with the people that are in front of you and who you're referring them to and things like that. You know, again, movement's not muscles. I think this goes back a little bit to kind of what is golf fitness. I think we need to get past, you know, the old idea of the leg day, the chest day, the arm day, those kind of things. You know, that's a very bodybuilding way to look at training. Doesn't mean you won't get strong, doesn't mean you won't potentially be in great shape, but we're missing some of those elements of golf fitness if we look at it from that standpoint. And I think, you know, working out, it's not about sweating and it's not about being sore, or that should not be the judge of a good workout, okay? Some of our members here don't feel like they've had a good workout unless they're, you know, lying on the floor, they're breathing heavy, their shirt's coated in sweat, and they're, you know, basically can't move the next day, okay? That may be a good workout, but it's not the only indication of a good workout, okay? So, you know, don't feel like because again, we're going to prioritize technique, we're going to prioritize the way we progress things, and, you know, some people may be able to perform at different levels in the gym, just like you may give people different drills in a lesson. So just understand that is not the only indicator of a good workout. Want to talk quickly about writing a workout, and I'm going to, you know, we could do a 3-day, 8-hour day long seminar on how to write a good workout. I'm going to try to break it down in about 5 minutes here for you guys, because I think it can be that simple for most people. Because again, most people do not need complexity. Most people do not need more than the basics to have a little bit of improvement and a little bit more benefit from it than what we need. So I look at it from basically 3 big areas: lower body training, upper body training, anti-core training. Okay, and we'll get into more of those in a second. So the lower body can basically do 2 things. It can hinge and it can squat, okay? And that basically means it can primarily move with hip movement or primarily with knee movement, okay? So hinging is primarily hips. Those are your deadlifting variations, all the different deadlifting variations that are out there, hip thrusts, all those kind of things. Squatting, single leg squatting, lunging, those are more knee dominant, okay? So we talk about hip dominant, knee dominant. I want to make sure that there's a balance of both of those, and I want to make sure that everybody that I'm working with has the ability to do both of those at whatever level they're capable of, okay? But I want to program both of those things. I want to also program bilateral and unilateral exercises, okay? So in life and in sports, we do things on 2 feet and we do things on 1 foot, and we want to train on both of those as well, okay? So from a hip dominant, I want to make sure we're doing both, and from a knee dominant, I want to make sure we're doing both, okay? Upper body, Upper body can, again, if we break it down to basically the lowest level, it can do two things. It can push and it can pull, okay? So I want to make sure there's an even separation of those two within my program. And again, that program could be, if we just look at one day, it could be a week, it could be a month, whatever. You know, I'm not saying you have to include these in every workout, but if you go out over the period of a week or you go out over a period of a month, you want to make sure that you have a pretty good balance of those within whatever time frame you're looking at, okay? So upper body, we can basically push and we can pull, and I look at vertical and I look at horizontal, okay? Because it's, you know, training is specific to the range of motion that you do it in, okay? So only doing here is not going to help me as much here, and vice versa, okay? So I want to make sure we have a pretty good balance of those two things. You know, vertical, I'll skip that part, anti-core. So we talk a lot about core training in golf, okay? I think it's important to understand relative to, especially relative to golf, and I think relative to just movement and life in general, our core is actually more designed to transfer forces throughout our body, from our upper body to our lower body and our lower body to our upper body, than it is designed to actually produce movement, okay? So the basic example I would give is a plank versus a sit-up, okay? A sit-up is more of your traditional core exercise where you're trying to produce movement, you're trying to sit up, okay? Plank exercise is more designed to resist movement, okay? Gravity wants to push your butt to the floor. You're trying to resist that movement and stay in a good plank, okay? That's the type of core training we want to be doing for golf, and probably for most movement and things in general, okay? The core is gonna help us transfer forces throughout our body, okay, from the ground into the club head, which is what we want to do obviously from a golf standpoint. And going back to that resiliency thing, okay, if we don't have the ability to control and protect our spine, that's where we're going to end up with some trouble on the back side, on the back injury side of things, okay? Consistency, I think consistency is important, like with everything. One of the things I see a lot of is people think, you know, if I can't do the 5-day-a-week, hour-a-day, perfect program, I might as well do nothing, okay? And I think we need to try to get past that, where understanding that doing a little something on a consistent basis, even if it's not the greatest workout, even if you're not feeling 100%, do something to keep that needle moving forwards. Over the course of time, you're going to have a lot better general progress than if you sort of have this roller coaster, on again, off again type approach to your training. So consistency is very important. Frequency, you know, I think for our members, if all of our members were strength training 2 times a week, for most of them, that strength bucket would be filled to a point where it would no longer be limiting them in what they're trying to do in their golf game, okay? So it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. You know, like I said, I think if everybody were doing something twice a week, for most people that would be sufficient to play good enough golf. RPE, rating of perceived exertion. This talks a little bit about how intense we want our exercises to be, okay? And this is how I try to help our members understand how hard they should be working in their workouts so that they're making progress, but they're not overloading the system and potentially going down that overuse injury route, okay? So basically it's a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being something very easy, 10 being something very challenging. We want to live at about a 7 or an 8 for the most part, okay? That's going to guarantee that we're providing enough challenge to make a change, which is what we're trying to do, but not so much that we're overloading the system. Technique might break down. We might need more recovery time than we may have, and kind of go again down that route of overuse and potential injury. So I think that's an important concept to understand, and we'll kind of skip here. Strength is a skill. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about power, club head speed. So, you know, again, why is this important? Obviously, I think for the most part, distance will make this game a little bit easier. For most of your members, it makes it more fun. They enjoy it a little bit more. They can play it, you know, tees a little further back, maybe something that their buddies are doing, whatever the case may be. Distance makes the game a little bit easier and a little more fun for most people. You know, power work is, again, it's the intent with power, or the goal with power work is the intent of moving fast in a particular exercise. And I'll go more into that in a second, but it's the intent to move fast that makes something go from a strength exercise to a power exercise, okay? Power work should mostly be done, so if you're going back to that slide about putting together a workout, Your power work should mostly be done at the beginning of a workout. If an exercise that you're doing or you're giving somebody and the intent is to increase power for that individual, for yourself, it should probably be towards the beginning of your workout, okay? That's when your nervous system is most fresh, and that's when you're going to be able to express that intent that we're talking about, okay? Another mistake I see a lot is people turn power work into conditioning, okay? You know, if we're talking about an exercise like a box jump, okay, which is for some lower body power, you know, doing 30 box jumps, okay, now no longer is power training. Now you're more working at, you know, conditioning and endurance. So it's all about, again, the application of it. Probably be lower reps, okay? Most of the things we're doing power-wise is less than 8 reps, okay? If you're doing something more than 8 times, it's probably no longer a power component. It's probably moved into more strength or endurance. So understand a little bit about how that programming affects the outcome of what you get from that exercise. There's a lot of different modalities and tools you can use for power training. Things like Olympic lifts, ballistic dumbbell exercises, kettlebell exercises, those are all great tools. We use some of those here, but I don't use them with everybody, okay? Olympic lifts, basically these all have a skill and a practice component to them that a lot of people don't have, and a lot of people don't have time to acquire. So their ability to use those exercises to express that intent is not there, okay? So they may be not great choices for those individuals. For most of the people here and most of the people you're probably seeing, exercises like jumps and med ball throws are probably going to give you that lower body and upper body power training that's going to help you see some improvements in club head speed. Okay, so for most people, those are probably going to be your best bets. Lots of different types of jumps out there, lots of different types of med ball throws, but you know, those are probably going to be your best exercises to help improve a little bit of power and club head speed. And then, how many of you guys are familiar with super speed golf? Quite a few, good. I think this is a great tool for golfers, again, to work on that power training. If you're not familiar with it, basically it's a series of, unfortunately we're down to 2 of these. They have these clubs, they have a little bit of weight on the end, and basically they have a very light, a slightly underweighted, and then a heavier type club. And there's protocols of swings that you go through with these clubs on both sides, so it works on eliminating some of those asymmetries we talked about. But again, it just trains the nervous system to move a little bit faster than what people are typically swinging in their lesson. You know, people typically aren't swinging at 100%, so we don't have that push to increase club head speed there. I tell people all the time when they're swinging these, to think about the fact that I don't care where the ball goes right now, I just want you to hit it far. Okay, and swing as hard as you can like you're trying to hit as far as possible. I don't care where it goes, we're just trying to hit it far right now. And then they can kind of dial it back when they get back in working with you guys, but now that motor's been increased a little bit, and now that, you know, swinging at 80% of a bigger number is now a bigger number. Okay, so that's a great tool that we've been using here. If you're not super familiar with it, I would check it out. It works great. You can have it, you know, within a lesson, you know, 5 or 10 minutes of swings with that. Can see some benefit in the long term relative to club head speed. We're going to skip a couple videos here, because I'm going to stay on time, I promise. And we're going to talk a little bit about endurance. So, endurance. So getting back to how are we going to save some shots, okay? Well, I think endurance is going to keep us healthy, okay? If our body is stronger and can maintain that resiliency and that strength towards the end of the round, okay? You got a lot of, you know, sometimes some people a lot of swings during a day, or a lot of swings on a weekend, okay? It's got to have the endurance to be able to withstand all those. But again, if you are working with someone and you tend to see that, you know, maybe the last 3 or 4 holes of every round, they're kind of leaking a couple shots. You know, they tend to play really well through 13, 14, 15 holes, and then it's the last 3 holes of every round where you sort of see that nosedive a little bit, okay? There may be some mental or physical fatigue that's kind of setting in, and they're not able to keep the same technique, they're not able to stay as mentally focused, and, you know, working on a little bit of endurance work might help them stay in the same position they were on those last couple holes that they were at the beginning, okay? So, you know, the challenge, rounds can last 4 to 5 hours. Most of the people you're working with are probably not doing much during the normal day that lasts 4 to 5 hours, okay? So it's hard to maintain the physical and mental concentration for that period of time. You know, a lot of these courses they're challenging to walk, there's challenging terrain, We've got weather to deal with. You know, in the summer, obviously, it gets very hot. It gets hard to deal with that weather. We talked about, you know, recovery between rounds. You know, again, if you're playing in a tournament or you have someone playing in a tournament, they may be great on day one, but they don't have the ability to come back and play again on day two. And you see that, you know, that big change in that score every time they play a tournament between day one and day two. Or if it's a 36-hole day, you know, that's a long day. That's a lot of, and especially if they're carrying their bag or whatever the case may be, that's a long day. Endurance can really have an impact on how they're going to play those last few holes. You know, you've got heart rate recovery between shots. Okay, so you hit a shot, you got an uphill walk to a green, and now you've got to hit a putt, but your heart is pounding. Okay, that could potentially have an effect on your ability to make that putt. Okay, so some aerobic endurance is going to allow you to walk to that shot, heart rate come down a little bit faster, get a little more mentally focused, and maybe make a few more putts. Okay, you know, again, we want to play for a lifetime. You know, again, a lot of people stop playing, I think, because the game becomes too physically demanding. It starts to hurt. A little bit of endurance is going to give them that ability to play for longer, play more rounds as they get older, and continue to enjoy the game, help your clients enjoy the game a little bit longer. Again, I think it comes down to, again, for most people, if they're doing, you know, about 2 days a week of, 30 to 60 minutes of aerobic training, and what you want to try to do is shoot for a heart rate range of about 120 to 140 beats a minute, okay? Or if you don't have the ability to check your heart rate, you should feel like you could have a conversation with somebody while you're exercising, but the person you're talking to would obviously know you're doing something physically demanding, okay? So it's kind of a, you know, labored conversation. It's not just a normal conversation like I'm having now, but I'm also not so out of breath that I can't talk. It's kind of somewhere there in between. Okay, maintaining that pace, 30 to 60 minutes, 2 days a week, again, for most people, I think would eliminate that endurance or keep that endurance bucket full enough that it's not holding them back and not costing them shots. Pre-round warm-up. This is another one that I know I'm guilty of a lot, and I think a lot of people are guilty of. You know, they show up to the course, probably a little bit later than they intended to. They've been in the car for 30, 40, 60 minutes in a sitting position. They step out, they go to the clubhouse, they sign in, they walk right to the first tee and start playing. Maybe they hit a couple shots on the range, and basically their body is not as prepared to play the game as it hopefully could be. And I think, again, from an injury standpoint, if the body, you know, most people, I think, understand that warming up before you work out or warming up, you know, most people wouldn't go out and run a 100-meter sprint without a little bit of a warm-up. Well, I think that's what a lot of people do when they go to the first tee and just try to rip driver over 100 miles an hour. Warm-up is going to help save our bodies a little bit, and I think it's also going to save us some shots. You know, I know I've been guilty of going on playing around and really not feeling loose until the third or fourth hole. Well, I may have wasted 2, 3, 4 shots on those first couple holes simply by not being physically ready to go or mentally ready to go. A good, you know, it doesn't have to be good, but a 5 or 10 minute warm-up before you go to the range and hit balls, and then, you know, going to that first tee could save you a couple shots on the front end. Having a little more endurance could save you a couple shots on the back end. All of a sudden you save 2, 3, 4 shots around. That handicap starts coming down. Your lessons start to look hopefully a whole lot better. My general guidelines when I give somebody a warm-up is, you know, it can't include anything, it can't include any equipment unless it's something they're going to have in their golf bag. Okay, I find, you know, in general, most people are not going to take anything additional to warm up. I think a foam roller would be a fantastic warm-up. Most people are not going to take a foam roller to the golf course. I would not ask someone to do that in their warm-up. They're not going to do it. Nothing on the ground. Okay, most people are not going to get down on the ground in a parking lot, on a range, in grass when it's wet in the morning and do any kind of warm-up. Again, there might be some great exercises I could give people. People are generally not going to do them, so I'm not going to give them anything that's on the ground, and I'm not going to give them anything that looks too silly. Because again, on the range or in the parking lot, they're probably not going to do it. So it has to be relatively simple, relatively easy things that they can do, just to get the body moving a little bit, challenge some of these, you know, simply doing a couple of things that I asked Jason to do from an assessment standpoint, to just move in those ways that I need to see the body moving, we'll just kind of prep it a little bit and get it ready, okay? So 5 or 10 minutes could save a couple, you know, having the people you're working with have a good warm-up, either you giving them one or referring them to somebody that can give them one, could potentially save them a couple shots on the front end of things. Awesome. So game plan, hopefully for you guys, okay? What do you guys need to look for? and then what are we going to do about it? Okay, so you have somebody come in for a lesson, you're having trouble with them getting them to do something. What do we want to look at from a fitness side of things to figure out if that's a road we need to go down to make some changes? So do they have the required mobility that you need them to have? Okay, we talked about the TPI screen, we talked about the FMS screen, we showed you a couple screens that you guys can use, you know, on the range, in a bay, in a lesson, to quickly determine some big rocks, okay, that you're going to want to see your clients be able to do. If you see some limitations there, try to find some help to get them those things to improve. Okay, are they consistently strength training? Okay, again, I think strength is a bucket. You can make an assessment probably for yourself whether or not how full that bucket is for an individual. But again, I would, you know, I had this conversation with a member the other day about, you know, he was asking me, do I think he needs to strength train? And, you know, this was a gentleman who was, I think, in his early 50s or late 40s, early 50s, relatively fit. You would not look at him and say he's unfit or unhealthy. Doesn't hit the ball quite as far as he'd like to. Relatively athletic guy, plays hockey on the weekends, so he has some, you know, has some physical activity outside of this. My intuition would be if he's playing hockey, he's got some pretty good lower body strength, some pretty good lower body movement. Never done anything relative to strength training, and my explanation to him was, you know, I'm not going to say strength training is going to save you any shots. If you're trying to hit the ball far, you know, if you're not doing anything, to me that sounds like a bucket that's at least potentially empty. Okay, and I think there could be some benefit in you filling that a little bit more, and especially if you're not hitting the ball as far as you'd like to. As you get older and you're not training, you're typically not going to stay, you know, you're typically not going to get stronger, and you're probably going to go backwards relative to muscle mass and your strength ability. So even if it's just from a health longevity standpoint, it would probably make sense to include this to some degree. But I certainly didn't try to promise him that it was going to save him any shots. Just tried to explain the buckets that were empty and what it could potentially do to fill those buckets a little bit. Do the people you're working with hit the ball far enough to play to their desired handicap? Okay, if they do, fantastic. Again, strength, you know, or power exercises, strength exercises may not do a lot for them. But if they're not, there could be some exercises that they could be doing, or someone could give them, that are going to help them hit the ball a little bit further, make the game a little more fun, make it potentially a little bit easier. Are they, you know, do you see the fact that they're losing shots at the beginning or the end of a round? If it's at the beginning, I would make sure if they're not doing a good warm-up, that's something that gets included. Again, it could potentially get their body and their mind a little more ready to play from the get-go and save a couple shots in the beginning there. If you notice that every round they're losing some shots at the end, my guess would be that maybe they're getting mentally or physically a little bit fatigued, and their ability to play at the same level is kind of dropping off at the end. We could potentially save them some shots by bringing that endurance level up a little bit. And then we talked about having a pre-round warm-up. So what I would suggest, and I've sort of alluded to this several times, is kind of create a performance team for yourself, kind of like what we do here. You know, what we try to do for each of our members here is when they come in, they go through an assessment process. We do a fitness and a golf assessment, and the reason that we do that is to just give us information about the member that's in front of us. We then ask them about what goals are they trying to accomplish, whether they're fitness related, golf related, health related, whatever they are. So I know what they'd like to do. I now kind of know where they are through our assessment process, and then I can give them a prescription of, you know, lessons and massages and exercises that are going to get them from where they are to where they want to be. Okay, so again, not that you guys all have to be great trainers, but if you just understand a couple things to look for, a couple things that maybe are holding the people that you're working with back, you can create a little bit of a team, some resources that you can refer people to. Find a trainer that you're comfortable with that you can refer your clients to, that you know that you can say, you know, hey, did this screen, or so-and-so is having trouble with this in their swing. You know, can you screen them for me? Can you see if there's a physical limitation there? And then can you help them, you know, change that to some degree? You know, find a physical therapist if you've got clients that are in pain, okay? Pain is going to keep, you know, your body will do things in the golf swing to swing around pain. You may not even know they're in pain, okay? But if you're, you know, if as a right-handed player, if your left knee is in pain or your low back is in pain, you're going to do stuff in your swing to not be in pain. And you're going to, the things you see in your lesson, the paths you see, the attack angles you see, all these kind of things, maybe somebody swinging around pain so that golf doesn't hurt. Okay, so you may want to ask them, are you having any pain? And if they say yes, this has been hurting, having trouble here, some of the things that they're doing may be because they're trying to swing around that pain and discomfort. So having a physical therapist you can refer them to get them out of that pain could change what you're seeing in your lessons. And again, it's if they're not in pain or they don't develop pain, they're going to play longer, they're going to play more, they're going to take more lessons. And then like I talked about massage, again, if you have someone who isn't moving very well, recommending that if they don't have a foam roller, get a foam roller, make that a consistent part of their daily routine, have a massage therapist that you can refer people to. People are going to feel better, they're going to move better, they're going to appreciate that, and they're potentially going to see some changes in what you're doing in their lessons based on how they feel and move. So I did it, I stayed on time, clicker worked. My email address, so we're going to be around for questions a little bit after. Happy to answer questions then. Happy to answer questions by email. Social media, if you guys, I post a lot of stuff, exercises, different things on social media to try to basically explain in a little more detail a lot of the stuff that I talked about today, so you can check that out. And then, like I said, Jason and I'll come back at the end to answer some questions there, okay? So let's take about 5 minutes, okay? We're going to kind of switch presentations, and then we'll meet back here, and we'll start with nutrition and recovery. Jason's been with us for about 3 months, came to us from Equinox. I'll let him talk any more about himself than he'd like to, but he's been doing a fantastic job here, not only as a trainer, working with our members, but he's going to be taking over our nutrition program here, which is why I wanted him to get involved with us today. And he's going to be providing nutrition services for our members here and talking to them and how that element can help them play better, feel better, and I'll let him take it from there. Thank you.
Everybody. Hello. Yeah, right. Let's give it up and give Mr. Kirk Adams. Great job, sir. I don't really like talking about this stuff, so that's okay. Yeah, so we got a long way to go in a short time to get there. All right, so we're going to be talking about nutrition and recovery. May not be the most sexiest of topics in the world, but we're going to try to do what we can. So let's get it going. So whenever I like to talk about something, I like to define what it is first, okay? So nutrition is a science that interprets the interaction of nutrients and other substances in food in relation to maintenance, growth, reproduction, health, and disease in organisms. That's a lot. Recovery is a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. Think this guy's recovered? Probably not. Right? Not saying that you guys are there or not, but this is just kind of what recovery means. So yes, we're going to talk about these two things today. And the next thing, we want to start with why. Has anybody heard of this book by chance? Show of hands. Funny story, whenever I give a talk like this, I always like to reference this book because I think it's super important. Simon Sinek, he's based out of New York. And I saw him one day on the 72nd Street platform, but I didn't talk to him because I was scared. But he has a lot of great books out. But basically, what we want to do here is he developed something called the Golden Circle, the concept of the Golden Circle. And most folks can tell you what they do, right? Some people can tell you kind of how they do it, but a lot of people can't tell you why they do it. So again, we want to look at nutrition, recovery, just kind of this whole big picture as to why we're doing what we're doing, okay? We have the unique capabilities to kind of take a step back, and look at ourselves and examine kind of why we're doing what we're doing. But again, a great book, that I highly recommend you guys getting into. But he talks about, again, why are we doing what we're doing? And I think it's certainly important for kind of the context of our discussions for today. Now, whenever we're talking about nutrition and recovery, and really anything for that matter, we want to look at compliance, okay? So you can have the best plan in the world, but if it doesn't stick, right, I would argue it's probably not worth having, right? So whenever we come up with any type of fitness plan, like Kirk alluded to earlier, nutrition plan and or recovery plan or practice plan, whatever that looks like, we want to make sure that we can probably knock that out of the park 9 out of 10 times. Okay, have any of you ever started, show of hands please, something that, and it was just too big kind of right away and you just ended up kind of not doing it at all? Anybody? Yeah? A few of us? I think of like New Year's resolutions, right? A lot of folks will hit the gym in the first week or two, gung-ho, and then after that, it just kind of nosedives. It could be because maybe the expectation was a little too high, right? So again, like I said, when we're talking about these things today, it's more about meeting you where you're at, you know, or where your members are at, right? A lot of times, we may think we might have the answer, but a lot of times, because of life and the stuff that happens, maybe it's not good timing or things like that. Maybe the goal's too big. So we want to secure something that's a 9 out of 10. So what would that look like, for instance? So let's take practice, for instance. I'm in a good room to discuss with folks about that. In an ideal world, how many times would you like folks on average to practice? Days per week? Anybody?
That's what job.
One time. I heard one time. Can I get 2 or 3? Can I get 2 or 3? 2, 3, 3, 3 right here. Okay. Right. So in an ideal world, let's just say that somebody you know, is super busy, as most of us are. You know, maybe practicing 4 times a week isn't. Maybe maybe I can commit to that 4 out of 10 times. So I think you guys get that. But maybe 1 time a week, maybe I can secure 9 out of 10. And if so, that might be a good place to start. So just kind of want to drive that home. Again, the best plan in the world won't get you there if the commitment level is super low. Another thing I like to do too is to just kind of do weekly experiments, right? So in other words, try and see. You know, on the fitness side, I'm sure Kirk would agree with this. You know, if we're doing a particular movement and or strategy with someone, if it's not working, then you may want to move on to something else, right? If you do something that does work, maybe you want to keep that, right? So we just kind of want to try and see with things. So how this works in the world of nutrition is that, and you'll hear me say this a lot today, everybody's body is different, right? So I mean, we can give you guys general guidelines for folks, but really it's about kind of how you feel at the end of the day. So yeah, just evaluating your progress on a daily or weekly basis. Again, kind of whatever works best for you and or your members, right? I mean, doing check-ins. I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I know Kirk does it as well, and Matt. You know, we'll check in with folks each time and say, you know, how was your sleep? How you feeling today, right? So that way we can kind of modify things. But you just want to have a way that you can kind of monitor things on a daily and or weekly basis. So that way you can make the necessary changes. And again, we just touched on this, making the goal smaller if unreasonable to achieve, right? So you want to break it down into smaller chunks. Anything there? You might have any comments, questions on that? So this is my physiology joke right here. So this is several metabolic pathways to energy metabolism. And what I was going to say is that, as you can see, it's all very simple. Halfway response, that's okay. But that's, yeah, okay. Moving on. Macronutrients, okay? Carbs, fats, proteins. You all pretty familiar with that? For the most part, right? Because nowadays a lot of folks will hit you with, you know, this is good and this maybe not so good. My job today is just to kind of lay things out there and just to kind of suggest what you may feel might work best for you and or a particular person in a given situation. Just a simple breakdown here. Carbohydrates obviously are a main source of energy for folks. How that breaks down is that for every gram of carbs that you take in, there's 4 calories roughly. For every gram of protein, right? So if you have a chicken breast that's, 1 ounce, I'm not sure if that's how much protein that is, but anyway, so for every gram of proteins in that chicken breast, there's 4 calories. What do you notice about fats? Anybody see that? Tastes good. Sorry? It tastes good? I like the way you think. So 9 calories per gram, right? So what does that mean? So fat's more energy dense. Okay, so we get more bang for our buck from an energy perspective from fats. Okay. Anybody think fats are bad? Raise your hand. Kind of a trick question. Everybody thinks fats are okay? I thought I saw somebody wanted to raise their hand. Okay, that's okay. All right, so we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But again, these are your macronutrients. So this is the basis of the energy that we take in from foods, right? And then most things have these, some maybe more often than not, but yeah, again, this is just kind of the basic overlay here. Okay, what do you notice about this? continuum, right? So basically, this is optimal health, optimal wellness, okay? This is what you more than likely do not want. Premature death, right? 0 to 10. I wanted to put this up here is because there's always a bit of a trade-off, right? So if you're the type of person that wants optimal health, what we know is that that's going to look a little different than, say, maybe being at a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Can anybody give me an example of that? No examples. That's okay, because I do have an example. Optimal wellness, what that would look like is that would mean calorie restricting, because we know that folks that tend to live longer calorie restrict. They eat about once a day, right? And they basically do little to no activity. Okay? I don't want to live like that. I don't know about you guys, but that's basically what optimal longevity looks like. Okay? What's the opposite of that look like? Can anybody kind of give me any examples of maybe say like a 1 or a 2 out of 10? Maybe that's inactivity. Maybe that's eating a lot of processed foods, right? Maybe that's drinking a lot of alcohol. Maybe that's smoking. These types of things, right? So again, the takeaway here is because we're sports specific, we're probably going to kind of live in this 7 to 8 world, or at least that's kind of the goal from all this, okay? But just so that you know, again, the takeaway from this is that there's always some type of trade-off, okay? Everybody remembers this, right? Yeah? Okay. Blue pyramid, right? Everybody recognize this? It's like, what do we eat? Anybody have any idea? I don't really know it. I'm the nutrition guy, so maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's okay. This came out in 1992. Okay, so this used to be the gold standard, if you will, as far as what we should eat from the Food and Drug Administration. So what does everybody see here? What's kind of the breakdown? What's at the bottom of the pyramid? Okay, are carbs bad? Yes. Yes. Yes, carbs are bad. I thought I saw a hand back there. Carbs are bad? Yes, no? Neutral? Okay. All right. So this is what we were told. We were told to eat 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates a day. What's on this second part here? Veggies and fruit. Would everybody agree with that for the most part? Yes, no? Indifferent? Yes? Okay. What's up above that? We've got protein, we've got dairy, and what's at the bottom? Or sorry, at the very top of the pyramid. Well, didn't we just say that fats were good? Okay. Does anybody eat like this? Not to point anybody out or anything, but okay, right on. I appreciate your honesty. That's very good. Okay. So this came out in 1992, and again, this was kind of the standard of what we were recommended to eat. Fast forward. That's a little different, right? How's this different? Anybody tell me? Protein's at the bottom. So this is, purple's protein, right? So again, they kind of went vertical here with the pyramid now. So protein's over here. Do grains still make up a pretty decent portion of this? Yeah? But maybe not so much, I don't know, as the one in 1992. This came out in 2005, by the way. They're still saying for us to eat a lot of veggies, right? So that's the green. The fruit, I think, has got a little bit smaller. Do you remember that? So if we go back, can we go back? Yeah. So right, so that was roughly half and half there, right? So it looks like they made a little bit of a change, trying to emphasize more vegetables here. What about oils, right? So fats. You can barely see that, right? Okay, so they really don't like fats still. It appears to me, anyway. One of the main things that they added, think outside the triangle. Activity, right? So I would imagine agreeing that physical activity is good for you, which I would agree with that as well. Okay. My plate, 2011. Anybody notice anything different with this? Vegetables got bigger? Oh wow, they did, didn't they? So it looks like vegetables have overtaken grains. No carbs, did you say? Oh, sorry, less carbs. Okay, yeah, so more vegetables, less carbs. Did I get anything else? Anybody else on this? Has protein got bigger? So protein's here. Oh yeah, so it did, right? So protein's here. And look at protein here. That's maybe like 25% now. Still have dairy. Okay. Oh. Oh, that pyramid. What's that do? What do we eat? I don't know. What do we eat? Right? So this is totally. And this isn't. I put this in myself, obviously. So fat's here at the bottom. Now, is it any type of fat? Good fats. Natural fats. So what are good fats? Anybody? Avocado? Coconut oil? Eggs? Whole? Oh. What kind of eggs? Cage-free, organic, free range, omega-3 eggs, right? Whole eggs, right, is the big takeaway. You all remember, I think it was a Time magazine article, maybe, I'm dating myself here, maybe like early 2000s about eggs and how they would kill you.
Cholesterol, right? Like high
Cholesterol, yeah. I think is anybody subscribed to that? I think we're starting to kind of change now to fats are okay, but we don't want to combine them with a lot of carbs, right? We'll get into that here in just a moment. But again, this is the type of food pyramid I would like to introduce, you know, with more kind of fats here, and again your vegetables and then proteins and natural sweeteners at the top. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Why are your fermented foods so high on the pyramid?
Well, good question. On the other ones, the fermented foods weren't even a recommendation, right? Now, it could very well be that fermented foods might need to make their way a little bit lower on the pyramid, and I think you can make an argument for that. Does anybody know examples of fermented foods?
Right there.
Yogurt, correct? Yeah. Anything else?
Well, kombucha is really popular all over the place.
Correct.
There's lots of
Kimchi, right? Sauerkraut, pickles. Maybe not the most popular things in the world, right? But why do we bring that up? And again, I'm glad that you did that. For gut health. Gut health is becoming a more popular topic nowadays, and rightfully so, because 90% of our DNA is located in the gut, right? Because of all the bacteria. And people have known this for years and years, and they eat fermented foods, and we know that there's a specific link between the gut and the brain, right? So gut and brain health. But again, I don't want to get too far off on that tangent, but again, I'm glad that you brought that up, because this is the introduction of fermented foods as opposed to not really even having it on there at all. But again, just something that I'd like to throw out there for you guys to potentially consider as well. Okay. One of the reasons why this recommendation is here is because of this right here. Does anybody know what this is? Well, that's the answer. So it's metabolic syndrome. Is anybody familiar with that? Type X syndrome. Anybody heard of that? Show of hands. Okay, one person. Metabolic syndrome was basically a term coined from different types of biomarkers in the body that have a high propensity of leading to cardiovascular risk. Okay, and I put some of the specifics over here on the right for both men and women. But basically, if you exhibit 3 of these 5 symptoms, it could suggest that you have metabolic syndrome. Okay. One's visceral obesity, so that's fat around the organs. Right? So it's not fat that you can actually visually see, but fat around the organs. High triglycerides. So if any of you had a cholesterol screening recently, obviously you know that triglycerides are a hot kind of topic as far as wanting physicians to kind of look at that. That essentially is the amount of fat that you have in your blood. Hypertension, right? So high BP, low HDL, right? So we associate HDL with kind of the good kind of cholesterol. I'm kind of backing off of that based on some things that I've been reading not too kind of recently, but But there's that, and there's insulin resistance, which we'll get into here in just a moment. Again, the specifics are over here on the side. So I'll just go through a couple of these. So abdominal obesity. So if you take a waist circumference as a male and you're over 40 inches, that is one symptom, right? And what do we know about metabolic syndrome? We need at least 3 of these to kind of classify as having that itself. And again, we're just talking about here the propensity to have cardiovascular risk, if you will. As a female, if it's more than 35 inches. For the HDL, we need 40 milligrams here per deciliter, and in women it's 50. The blood pressure is 130/85, and your fasting glucose if it's over 110. Again, your physician will be able to interpret these results for you. But again, something super important just to have an understanding about, because I know we're talking about golf fitness and golf nutrition, but I can make a strong argument that you won't have that proper endurance, right, if your waist circumference is there and if you're not feeling well, right? So we want to kind of get a handle on what that looks like, and this is a big proponent of why folks may have these types of instances for, again, cardiovascular risk, which is the #1 killer in the country. And this is a big thing right here. So insulin control. Now there's a lot of hormones in the body, but insulin, I'm sure you all are very familiar with. One of the things that we want to do is we want to control for that if we can as much as possible throughout the day. And we're going to get to the golf nutrition side here in just a moment, but you'll understand the importance of being able to control for insulin. So does anybody have any ideas about how we could potentially do this? How we could try to keep your insulin levels relatively stable throughout the day?
Eat every couple hours.
Okay, eat every couple hours. Anybody else?
Control carbs.
Control carbs, yeah. Carbohydrates, because whenever we eat any type of food, we have an insulin release, right? And we get that release higher off certain foods than others, right? So the carbohydrate, that tends to elicit a higher response from insulin whenever we ingest it, as opposed to maybe, say, having something that's more predominantly fat, okay? So again, it's important to kind of keep those blood sugar levels stable, again, before you play, while you're playing, and then after the fact, if possible, okay? But insulin is a really big driver of our overall health, if you will. Glycemic index, anybody know what that is? Okay. Glycemic load also, which is a little bit different. So number associated with a particular type of food and its effect on your blood sugar, okay? So we've got some examples here. What do we see at the bottom? 0 to 10. So these are low glycemic index foods. What are they? Vegetables. Just vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are low glycemic foods. What about the 10 to 30 range? What are those? We start to get into more tasty stuff, right? Right. So we have grapefruit, cherries, some because not all fruits will give you that same kind of response. And again, you'll see where we're leading with this here in just a moment. Dark chocolate. Any dark chocolate fans? That means 70% or higher. Not 65. All right. So what's kind of middle of the road here? 30 to 50 on the glycemic index. Natural yogurt, dairy. Again, we're still seeing fruits here. So strawberries, apples, pears. Right, but again, you see how that's different from, say, we'll go up here in just a minute and see the higher ones. Okay, so what's the 50 to 70? Now again, remember, the higher that we go up, the more our blood sugar is going to respond, okay? And what do we do? What did we just say? We want to try to keep that as level as we can, for the most part, right? What's 50 to 70?
Carbs. Sweets.
Carbs.
Chris Marinara's eye.
That was a good one. I like that. Corn, brown rice, spaghetti, popcorn, ice cream, bananas, grapes. Interesting caveat with bananas. Are all bananas created equal? Where am I going with that? If I have a banana with brown spots on it, it's super soft. versus one that's, you know, that you can hardly get the peel off of, a little bit greener. There's a different glycemic response on that one, right? So the greener one, you think is going to have a higher glycemic response or a lower glycemic response? Lower, right? Very good, awesome. The one that has kind of developed a little bit more is going to have a higher sugar content. So therefore, whenever you ingest that, your blood sugar is going to go higher. Again, there's a time and place for your blood sugar to go up, but again, we want it to, again, just to reiterate, to be relatively stable. What's at the top? Can you guys read that for me? All the good stuff, right? Off the record, of course. So 70 to 100. So this is the really high GI stuff that you'll respond to. So anybody, how many people breakfast in the morning? Breakfast. Okay. What do you have? Just throw it out there. Eggs.
Yogurt.
Sausage,
Yogurt,
cereal,
berries, and nuts.
Yogurt. Toast. Okay. Supplementation. So you've we'll get into sleep here in just a moment. So you've slept for 6 to 8 hours, or is that a joke? Okay. So 6 to 8 hours, hopefully, kind of in that world. We'll talk about sleep here in just a moment. So you're essentially in a bit of a fasted state. Your body, and again, we'll get into some other things here in just a moment. Circadian rhythm. Anybody ever heard of that? Circadian rhythm. Okay. Your body has a natural propensity to be more sensitive to insulin in the morning time, okay? Now, if you're in a fasted state and you ingest something that's maybe a bit higher on the glycemic index, what do you think that does to insulin whenever you have breakfast in the morning? Spikes it. Okay. What's the most important meal of the day? Trick question. Okay. Again, I want to just present it and let you guys kind of take it from here, but your insulin does go up quite a bit, and it can be influenced again by food choices. Again, so I just want you to have a general idea about what that looks like. Hydrate. Water. You guys drink water for the most part? Oh man, that was like 25% of the room. Okay. Is anybody? Okay. First study of its kind here. Now, I've been told that if you want to find something bad enough, you can find a study that supports that. But with that being said, this is the first study of its kind that found that if you water restrict someone, that on the golf course, it says that your shots will be 12% shorter. Look at accuracy. I have your attention now. I had your attention before. 93% less accurate. So basically what they did was they took a group of folks and they actually intentionally restricted them from water intake, and this is what they found. Okay, so if you remember anything else beside this, beside the whole presentation, if you will, I would actually like you to remember probably other stuff, but from a golf perspective, please remember this, okay? Hydration is important. So what does that look like? Well, anybody thirsty right now? Like, it's cool. It's fun. Anybody thirsty right now? That's great. So if you're thirsty, that means that you're actually essentially in the first stage of dehydration. Now, so again, what does that kind of look like? Well, these folks here, they were about 2% of their total body weight without water, right? So if we can do the math, so if you have a 200-pound individual, 2% of that is what, 4 pounds? Sounds like a decent amount of water. But guess what? In the summertime, if you're playing, you're perspiring, right? Maybe you're carrying your bag, maybe you're not, but right? I mean, you lose more water than you think. And again, I'm telling you now from this study that it directly impacts performance. Okay? I mean, what are the strategies here? I mean, a lot of you folks apparently drink a ton of water, which again is fine. But how can we kind of stay hydrated? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be water. I'm not talking about alcohol, but how can we kind of improve that? Just have a bottle of water wherever you go. There was a study done with folks with candy at their desks, right? They followed these people for a year. What do you think happened to their weight after a year? It went up. I think it was 8 to 10 pounds. Why? Because it was there, right? So if you have water or some form of hydration in your proximity, you're more than likely going to have it, right? So just kind of keep that in mind is all. Anybody carry a bottle of water while you're playing? Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Very good. Okay, pre-round nutrition. Anybody eat before they play? I know that's a bit of a trick question because you may play super early, you may play kind of midday, but I mean, do most folks try to eat something before they play? Now, how's that working out for you? And I mean that sincerely. Like, in other words, do you feel like you're in a good spot right now with that, or not so much? You do. Okay. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as we say in the South, right? So, you know, all good. I would just like to make a few recommendations as far as what might be optimal for you. Again, the main takeaway from this throughout my years of self-experimentation is it really comes down to how you feel, right? I mean, if you're feeling maybe, say, like some gastric distress, like where you might be bloated a bit, or maybe some foods that aren't agreeing with you, then, again, back to kind of what we talked about earlier, if it's not working, you may want to consider moving on to something else. But if it is working, then, you know, maybe you want to hang out where you're at. 3 to 4 hours before you play. Now, we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about closer to pre-round as well. We want to be higher in carbohydrate. Now, you say, oh, hold on a second. You just said, in my food pyramid, I didn't talk about carbohydrates. Well, I didn't. Remember, I had fat at the bottom, right? But, you know, you're going to need energy for playing, right? And carbohydrates will help with that, okay? It's the same thing about with the insulin argument, right? I mean, again, having higher insulin at certain times of the day isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just want to make sure we got it under control. You want this meal to be lower in fat and fiber, again, because when you're playing, again, the body doesn't know what's really going on. Its main goal is what? Yes, but to survive, right? I mean, it just wants to survive. So it doesn't really care if you have a six-pack, right? It doesn't really care about that. It just wants to survive. And with that being said, your body's going to be competing from a digestive standpoint while you're playing. And that's why I'm saying, you know, if you're not feeling in an optimal position whenever you're playing, again, you might be eating a little too much, too close to when you play, right? Or the foods you have might not be quite agreeing with you, or whatever the case may be. But again, really just, and I'll say this again, just listen to your body. What's your body telling you? Okay? Because again, if you feel like that something's not right, then something's probably not right. Moderate protein, again, from the whole digestion standpoint, we want to really control for that. And again, like I just talked about, make sure that the food that you're taking is well tolerated. Examples: omelet with toast, chicken sandwich soup. Okay. 60 to 90 minutes prior to, right? So if you're the type of person that wants to grab and go and just eat something a little bit quicker, closer to the round, this is mainly a recommendation from a digestive standpoint, right? So in other words, we don't want anything super heavy. And again, I think this is pretty common sense for a lot of folks, right? I mean, you guys, I think for the most part know that. I mean, you don't want to eat anything super heavy right before you play, like an hour to 90 minutes right before you play. So the recommendation here is, you know, I'm a big fan of berries, fresh fruit, maybe some yogurt. Again, if you tolerate dairy, okay?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
So, 3 to 4 hours prior to play, say you have a 7:30 tee time though.
Okay.
How can you still, you know, get what you need?
And again, I'm glad you asked that. That's a good question. That's if you opt to do that. Yeah, that's if you opt to do it. In other words, so let's just say you've got all day to kind of prep, and maybe it's like in the middle of the day round type of thing. If you want to have something at 10 or 11, right? But again, to your point, if you want to make it quicker prior to, which sounds like to me like what you were talking about, if you're going to only be playing about 60 minutes before, then I would recommend this instead. That makes sense?
You said higher in carbohydrates.
Correct. Yeah, I know. And remember what I just said about the whole food pyramid thing, right?
Yeah.
About kind of my recommendation for the food pyramid. In an ideal world, I would prefer a higher fat diet. However, with that being said, most folks, because of the energy that you're going to be expending and how you're going to be expending it, you may respond better to higher carbohydrate in this specific instance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you said 7:30 tea time.
Okay.
And we're eating yogurt.
Well, again, this is an option. So this is pre-round. So in other words, if you're the type of person that wants to eat about 3 hours before you play, I would recommend probably a little bit slightly or heavier meal. But if you're the type of person that's like, okay, well, I just woke up and I'm probably going to be playing in an hour or hour and a half, then in that instance, right, you may want to go with something a bit lighter, right? And that's all I was saying. So I was giving you options at 3 hours and an option at 60 minutes.
I mean, for peak performance, do you think these guys are waking up at 4 in the morning and having a big meal?
3 hours before play every time. Yeah. And the guys on tour, for sure. If we play at 7:30, they're up super early for.
Okay, enter round, right? So moving along. So while you're playing, now, does anybody eat anything while they're playing? Okay, about half, probably a little bit over half the room. Major takeaways here, quick and convenient, right? Like you don't want anything overly extravagant. We want to stabilize energy and blood sugar, right? Because again, if we're getting fluctuations in that while we're playing, that could be probably not a great thing. Again, we don't want any competition with our game, right? So in other words, from a gut standpoint, we want something that we're going to tolerate well. I've got a couple examples here. Hummus, right, in a cup potentially with some veggies. Cups to boost energy and fight off hunger. An energy bar, you know, it can't be limited in sugar. You can actually make these on your own, but you got to really look at the labels on these. Granola, trail mix, again, lightweight, very easy. And jerky because it's jerky. I like jerky. Okay. Again, protein, right? So from a sustainability standpoint, it should help to kind of fill you up long term. And again, these are just kind of examples I'm sure you guys have heard of. If not, maybe you can kind of pick one or two here. Post round. And I don't have, okay, that's not I'll just go with. So post round is basically going to mimic essentially what your pre-round would look like, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be a little bit higher in protein, right? Because you need a recovery aspect with this. You know, example over here is like a flank steak with, you know, some potatoes and a side salad. You know, again, ideally, if we can get some type of, you know, chicken like snap peas and sweet potatoes. I mean, again, we're looking to kind of refill our glycogen, right, which is our main energy source. And again, this would be a recommendation for post-round nutrition. Oh, there it is. Yep, restore glycogen levels, normalize blood sugar. Average rounds 3 to 4 hours. It may go higher, it may go a little bit lower. That's a lot of calories. Again, like I just said, higher in carbohydrates. Lower in fat, again, we don't want much competition from the gut side here. Higher in protein, again, from a recovery standpoint. And again, the main takeaway here is just well tolerated, which we'll get to in just a moment. Everybody good there? Okay. Yeah, and big fan of this book, Jeff Morrison. He's based here in the city. Cleanse Your Body, Clear Your Mind. It's a basic 30-day detox. I'm sure you guys have heard of that before. It allows you to take a score prior to and then post. And this is great because it allows you to identify your trigger foods. So you look at main things like grains, dairy, nightshades, nuts, eggs, processed foods. Again, I know we've talked about some of these, and that's why I wanted to go back and say, hey, you know, how's your body responding to these types of things? On average, what they found at the end of the 30 days, without even exercise, but just changing from a dietary perspective, these people lost on average, I think it was about 8 pounds just from changing their food, right? Because they obviously had foods in their diet that were trigger foods. And something like a 70% increase in their symptoms, right? So again, he has you assign a score to things like, you know, how do you feel? Are you fatigued? You know, what's your skin like? And these types of things. Again, at the end of the 30 days, a 70% improvement in symptoms. So again, it might be worth just trying. Again, if you're a fan of self-experimentation, my mom and sister did this, and they both saw tremendous results. I did it as well, and it was super helpful. Yeah, I mean, these are just the things that impact our daily living with food choices, right? So as you can see, there's a lot of different things here. If you're a sweet or salty person, right, I mean, that's a biological type of factor. And then, you know, we're affected by marketing and these types of things that kind of impact our decision. I don't know if you guys have ever been sitting on the couch before and saw a commercial for something like, I want that, right? And it's food, right? So just a lot of different things that impact our food choices here that we want to be aware of. And then there's these stages of change, right? So again, not to get too heavily involved in this, but if it's something that, and we're kind of, you know, transitioning now to the behavior side of it, if it's something that's just not doable, you don't want to talk about, then maybe it's not something that you would identify right now to want to change with your nutrition or with your recovery or with your fitness. Again, we talked about this before, removing the big rocks, right? So the low-hanging fruit, you may want to attack those first. So if you're a person that, let's just say, drinks your calories, maybe you're a type of person that, you know, drinks 5 soft drinks a day. That's one of the main things that I look at first to identify with people to kind of help them to start to maybe potentially ease and pull away from that. Okay, so if I'm having 5 a day, maybe I could do what? Go to 4, right? And just kind of go from there and progress it. But again, to repeat, low-hanging fruit. You look at your behaviors, If it's something that you know you shouldn't be doing, maybe doing some other things, you may want to, again, attack that low-hanging fruit first. Yeah, what's that look like? So again, high soft drink consumption, inadequate hydration. People ask, well, how much water should I drink? Well, roughly it's going to be about half your weight in ounces, on average, right? If you're the type of person that exercises, you're outside all day, you probably need a little bit more than that. But an average person, let's just say about half your body weight in ounces. So 200-pound individual, 100 ounces of water, roughly. Highly processed foods, that looks good right now. Excess of alcohol, inadequate sleep, and low veggie intake. A couple dietary strategies. In the ketogenic diet, it's more of a high-fat approach. Fasting. Now, there are contraindications here. If you're a person that is a type 2 diabetic, if you have something like that, you may not want to try fasting, just so you know, right? The fasting is great because you can do it anytime, anywhere. It doesn't cost you anything. And we know that by fasting, it actually improves someone's health, right? Because the average feeding window for most folks here in the Western diet is 15 hours a day, right? So if we can kind of cut that down and chop it down, which we'll talk about in a minute, it actually gives the body more time to repair. Anybody fast right now, by the way? Anybody fast? It's up to capacity? Okay. When I say fasting, I'm talking about at least 12 hours without food. Hunger control strategies. Okay, so eat on smaller plates. It works. It's psychological, but it works. Eat with your opposite hand. Anybody heard? No? Right. Seems kind of weird, but eat to your 80% full. Why 80% full?
It takes 20 minutes to figure out if you're full.
Yes, sir.
Save room for dessert.
Don't listen to that man. Adequate sleep. HALT. Who's heard of HALT? Acronym. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Right? We're emotional creatures. So who's been upset before? Okay, Kirk, I'm going to say it right now. I was kind of pulling for the Patriots. I'm sorry. So when the Patriots lost, I was, so maybe I ate something I shouldn't have. Whatever. So lonely, tired, right? So again, when we're tired, again, we're more prone. I mean, how many people have gone to the grocery store hungry? You don't want to do that, right? Perfect. All right, HALT. Eat more healthy fats. People have mentioned this before. Avocado, grass-fed butter, these types of things. Unlimited veggies with a twist. Look out for your nightshade vegetables. Eggplant, peppers, corn, these types of things. H2O all day, every day, right? Waters, you can have as much of that as you want. Avoid grocery shopping with hungry. Food prep for the week. Anybody food prep at all? Prep their food. Maybe Sunday is a popular day. Yep. Okay, cool. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So, in other words, you got to set yourself up for success. Shop the perimeter of the store, right? So, what's usually on the perimeter? Veggies, right? All that. What's usually in the middle? Not fruit, or maybe not vegetables. 80-20. So, we're not trying to be perfect here. Nobody is, right? So, 80-20. So, what does that look like? So, in other words, if you eat 3 times a day, right? How many meals is that a week? 21, right? So 80% of that. So what does that mean? So it's about 17 meals that are pretty solid, right? But 4 that maybe might not be as solid, which is okay. Why? Because that's sustainable, right? That's going to help you to go long term. A lot of folks think they got to nail it 100% all the way. Just through my experience, it's just not the case. Eliminate, minimize foods in proximity. We'll talk about that. Food delivery services, Kettlebell Kitchen, these types of things. Again, if it helps from a convenience standpoint, then I'm all for it. So why recover? We're going to kind of shift gears really quickly here to recovery. Supercompensation. Anybody familiar with this term? Supercompensation. Right, so in other words, whenever you exercise, right, for instance, you have to kind of go down before you can kind of recover and get better. Right, a lot of folks think that they get better when they're training. That's not the case. You get better on the recovery side. Okay, so just know that, right? Anything else, if you just remember supercompensation. We've got to recover in order to get better. Roll, foam rolling. Anybody heard of that? Okay. Anybody make chicken cutlets in here? Chicken cutlets? Chicken cutlets. Okay. So what do you have to do? You have to put saran wrap around the chicken. Anybody from here? Saran wrap. Take the mallet. Hit it. Okay. What's the saran wrap? Okay. So just so you know, the chicken is your muscle. Okay. The saran wrap is what's called fascia, right? Fascia. It encases the muscle. So what we're doing here is we're just helping to move around fluid, and we're helping things to move a little bit better. So why are we doing that? Well, aids in alleviating aches and pains. It helps to eliminate stress because it helps to release endorphins. It promotes the release of endorphins, okay? And enhance movement quality. Who doesn't want to move better? Right? If you move better, you feel better. If you feel better, you play better. Okay. Breathing. Kirk mentioned this earlier. Diaphragmatic breathing. Can everybody do like an exercise real quick? Place your hands on your stomach, please. And I want you to try to make yourself fat. Okay. So what I mean by that is that I want you to breathe through the low part of your stomach. Okay. This is the #1 thing that I recommend to folks. Okay, as homework. Breathing has been shown to lower your stress response. Stress is part of recovery, right? You can do this in bed. You can do it anytime, anywhere. Okay. The #1 thing I recommend to folks, okay? We're going to do a 2-1-3 tempo, okay? So 2 inhale, 1 hold, 3 exhale. What'd I say? 2-1, you said 2-1-2. No, 2-1-3. Nope, that's okay. I'm sorry for calling you out. 2-1-3. 2 inhale, 1 hold, 3 exhale, okay? So let's go. Ready? Take a nap now. You feel better? Right? I mean, I know that was three repetitions basically. But try this in bed. If you have trouble sleeping at night, try this in bed. Try this, you know, if you're about to hit a tough shot on the course, just close your eyes. Maybe your buddies will think you're weird, but that's okay. But just like close your eyes and just try to make yourself big through your stomach, because the diaphragm again is a dome-shaped muscle, and it is a muscle that goes in between the rib cage here. Whenever you inhale, it actually, and I always get this confused. Whenever you inhale, it goes down. Yeah. Whenever you exhale, it goes up. Okay. So again, belly breathing is super important, and I'm glad Kirk mentioned it earlier because it really is. Meditation. Anybody meditate? Meditate. You know, again, I think you have to agree that if you go through your daily living and you're stressed and you're, you know, just kind of a high-strung type of individual, I think you have to agree that if that does a detriment to you, if it makes you sick, I think you'd have to agree that the opposite is true, right? So meditation, I think there's a lot of value in that. These are a couple apps that I really like. Headspace gives you self-guided meditation, so it's a 30-day program you can try for free. And again, it allows you to go through a couple minutes of that. Again, it just really helps you to stay calm. I didn't talk about visualization here, but I mean, as you guys know, I mean, folks like Tiger, I mean, all the top people in the Olympics, they visualize their, you know, what they're about to do, visualizing a shot, let's just say. But again, I'm a big fan of meditation. Salk Institute, so this is kind of cool. They, kind of going back to fasting, they did a study on folks that had the same amount of calories in their day. So let's say 2,000 calories, which is kind of low. 2,000 calories in a day, okay? But they could eat anytime they wanted to, okay? Group A. Group B, same amount of calories, but in a time-restricted window, okay? I think it was 8 hours. So what does that look like? So what's an 8-hour window? 10 to 6, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., okay? Group B ended up losing more weight, okay? Again, if you look hard enough, you can find a study to support what you want, but nonetheless, time-restricted feeding works, okay? Same amount of calories, all right? Circadian rhythm, again, natural physiological process the body goes through, okay? All this means is that there's different times, during different times of the day, your body has natural tendencies to do certain things. So, Kirk, I'm sure you've heard of this. If you want peak strength output, what time do you normally train?
Peak strength output?
Correct.
I would think it would vary based on the individual, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of sort of true, but based on circadian rhythm, again, that's going to be around 3 p.m., right? So in other words, you don't want to typically do any kind of major strength work, if you will, earlier in the day, if you can. Same thing with reaction time. We know that reaction time peaks earlier in the day. If you want to do something that involves a lot of brain power, it's going to be earlier in the day, like around 10 a.m. for most folks, okay? Now, we're not talking about shift workers here. We're not talking about folks that, you know, maybe are kind of operating during different times of the day, but we're talking about a typical kind of 9 to 5 work schedule, if that makes sense. Circadian rhythm is massive, okay? When it comes to weight loss, you know, a lot of times we talk about you know, the diet, which is important, but how many people think about sleep? Sleep is a major contributor to weight loss, which leads us to sleep. Very good. So, a couple strategies here. I don't think I have to tell you guys about how important sleep is, but blackout curtains for your room. You want that as dark as possible. Okay. avoid electronics prior to bed. I'm sure that nobody in here has a TV in their room or uses their iPhone right before bed. I'm certain of it, so I'm not even going to ask. Yeah, so nobody does it. Very good. I should have just took that one off altogether. Right. Limit blue light exposure. Why? Well, because the eye will actually suppress melatonin, which helps you to sleep at night if it's exposed to blue light. So how do we do that? Well, there's different filters that you can use on your television screen, on your iPad, on your phone that will help to eliminate that. It's typically like a red light. It'll help to suppress melatonin. Alcohol, heavy meals prior to bed. The breathing exercise you guys just did, right? I mean, in bed, you can totally do that there. Close to the same time every night if you can go into bed. You kind of do a self-inventory on your current sleep habits. You know, is there anything that's kind of preventing me from getting there? A sleep mask. Anybody use a sleep mask? That can be good. It's funny, I use one, but usually when I wake up in the morning, it's not on my face. But that's okay. And have room temperature slightly cooler than normal. Cooler room can make a difference. A couple resources here. A lot of books I'm a big fan of. Just knowing how to read food labels, right? I mean, that's certainly an important place to go. A couple of infographics down here. You can track your food through MyFitnessPal, and you can figure out the amount of calories that you need. Happy to send these slides to you guys if you need them from a resource perspective. And that is me. So, and that is an M. There should be an M on the end of that. So, okay, thank you.
Jason, thank you very much. It is right about 12, okay? So want to kind of open the floor to Q&A. You know, happy to stick around for 20, 30 minutes if you guys have that amount of questions. But we're here to answer anything that came up during what we were talking about, or anything that you guys came here with that we maybe didn't happen to answer during our presentation. So kind of open up the floor and let you guys fire away.
For Jason, can you talk about some foods that will help inflammation, help you to prevent it, or?
Sure, no, absolutely, great question. I mean, I can tell you what causes inflammation, right? So in other words, if we can look at things that to avoid, I think that would take us a long ways to looking at things that would help combat inflammation. So we really want to look at insulin control with that. So what do we do that spikes our insulin, right? We talked about the high glycemic index foods. But basically, it really comes down to whole food sources, right? And I'm sure you've heard that. I mean, if it's packaged, it's not entirely bad, but you want to get really good at reading food labels. But I would highly recommend, again, that perimeter of the store, right? Because there you're going to have more vegetables. Ideally, fruits we definitely want to kind of be careful with just because of the fructose in it, how our body metabolizes that. But long story short, I mean, really whole food sources if you can, and really controlling for insulin. So just being careful with carbohydrates. And again, I know it may sound a bit contradictory about me mentioning those for a round. Again, insulin in itself isn't a bad thing, but you just want to be careful about how you control for it. I'm sorry, does that answer your question at all? Whole food sources for the most part. Do you have anything right now particularly that you were kind of questioning about as far as things that maybe you're currently eating you were questioning or anything like that?
No, just I have inflammation which causes pain, so just trying to attack it from more of a dietary standpoint rather than drugs,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I would highly recommend this food pyramid recommendation here. If you just look at the foods on here, right, the base, making that with healthier fats, right, again, whole eggs, coconut oil, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter, these types of things as a base, because that's going to help from a satiety standpoint. Inflammation is helped also through fasting, right? Because again, our body's not having to ingest and process food, right? But again, the main takeaway I would say is just is just whole food sources. A lot of vegetables there.
Thank you.